Revealed. How a millionaire CEO's autistic son went on a blind date and discovered unexpected love. Ethan clutched the cold metal of his watch, counting the seconds that slipped by unmourned. For a moment he wondered whether the world outside his pristine apartment was a different universe, one where he wasn't just Daniel's son but Ethan, a normal man shaping his own existence. As the loft filled with the incessant beeping of financial news reports, he sank into the familiar comfort of numbers, momentarily escaping the suffocating weight of expectations. But the chaos clashed against his preference for silence, and he felt it crawling under his skin. Another reminder of the scrutiny that shadowed him relentlessly. Navigating his father's corporate empire left Ethan exposed, not just to the judgment of colleagues but to the constant reminder that success had a price. Joined at the hip to the legacy of a millionaire CEO, Ethan's thoughts spiraled. Could he ever be enough, worthy of love, without the gilded badge of his father's success? The fear lingered. What if he just couldn't live up to the immaculate vision Daniel had crafted around his own life? Today, however, there was a flicker of change in the air. A family friend had nudged him towards the idea of a blind date. And while the mere thought sent his anxiety soaring, a part of him yearned to connect beyond the boundaries of his family's reputation. Could this woman, Mia, see him for more than what Daniel had built? Would she understand his intense love for numbers, the swirling comfort they provided amidst chaos? As Ethan prepared for the date, he felt the pull of duty at war with his own desires. Should he follow through, risk embarrassing his family's name, or stay in the silence he knew so well? Each breath felt strained as he considered the societal pressure tied to his last name, like it was a shackle around his ankle. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The cafe buzzed with life, laughter intertwining with the smell of fresh coffee, yet it felt like a battlefield to Ethan. Mia's vibrant energy challenged his quiet demeanor. Colors swirled around her as she painted intangible dreams with mere words. They connected over their shared feelings of being misunderstood. His avoidance of societal norms clashed with her unapologetic pursuit of art, and for a brief moment he felt safe. But in the back of his mind, he heard the whispers. What would happen if Daniel found out? He envisioned a confrontation, his father's disappointed eyes piercing through him like a blast of winter wind. The image twisted in his mind, feeding the dread that coiled in his stomach. What Ethan wanted clashed violently with familial expectations. The growing connection with Mia felt like breathing fresh air, yet with every heartbeat, the oppressive weight of Daniel's legacy loomed heavier. The fear gnawed at him. Was he stepping towards love or disaster? As the inevitable approached, the moment his father would discover this unpredictability, Ethan found himself on the precipice of despair. The fear morphed into a sharp pang in his chest as he balanced precariously between two futures, one that fulfilled family expectations and another that might finally embrace his true self. With the sweet smell of coffee and the vibrant spirit of Mia juxtaposed against the choking demands of his family name, he faced a crossroads. Would he choose to defend the glimmering path offered by love, no matter the cost of familial approval? The tension crackled in the air, leaving Ethan suspended in uncertainty, heart racing, desperate for resolution, but knowing he had yet to confront the storm brewing on the horizon. Ethan left the cafe with Mia's laughter echoing in his mind, the sound a balm for the chaos inside him. Her words had danced around their shared struggles, bridging the gap between their realities. Yet, as he stepped out onto the bustling city street, the weight of the world pressed down, pulling him back into the shadows where expectations loomed. The sharp contrast between their encounter and the life he returned to gnawed at him. The raw connection they had forged felt revolutionary against the backdrop of his well-scripted existence. It was thrilling, but also terrifying. Was he truly willing to challenge the narrative written for him? Streets filled with the rattle of cars and the chatter of pedestrians faded as he recounted their conversation, cherishing every moment. Mia had sparked something within him, a glimmer of hope. However, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. His father's looming influence shadowed each dawn, a constant reminder of what was expected, a blueprint he had been handed but never chose. The time had come to face this. He muttered to himself, clutching his phone tightly as he contemplated if he should call Mia. They had parted with laughter and promises to meet again, yet the thought of ruining it by revealing his family ties loomed large in his mind. Would she still want to know him if she discovered who he was? Ethan breathed in deep, his heart racing as he decided it was time to convey his true self, not just Daniel's son. That evening, he sat in front of his computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Each click of the keys felt monumental as he typed out a message to Mia, layering honesty over hesitation. He shared pieces of his life that no one else saw, the pressures of legacy, the weight that sometimes threatened to crush him under its intensity. He clicked send with a resolve that surprised him. This felt risky, but not taking a chance with Mia felt like failing before he'd even started. The next morning came with anticipation. Ethan paced by the living room window, eyes fixed on the city below, every tick of the clock a countdown to her response. The thoughts that tormented him adapted into something akin to excitement, the promise of what might be igniting a spark of courage within. When the notification pinged, he jolted and almost dropped his phone. It took him a moment to gather himself before opening the message. Mia had responded with grace, her words warm and accepting. She appreciated his honesty, acknowledging the fear that came with vulnerability. In that moment, the chasm he feared had closed fractionally, and the uncertainty lessened. Perhaps this journey wasn't just about romantic endeavors. Perhaps it was about self-discovery. He realized that he wanted more than a connection. He craved a sense of belonging to his own identity. It was a startling revelation, one that unveiled layers of himself that he had long suppressed. Encouraged, he crafted a plan, a way to merge the worlds he inhabited, the one built by his father and the one he envisioned for himself. But as Ethan began to enact his newfound resolution, an unexpected call interrupted his thoughts. It was his father, the tone sharp and foreboding. "We need to talk." The words wound through him like a chill, a reminder that stability was fragile. Ethan inhaled deeply, bracing himself for the confrontation to come. This conversation could unravel everything he began to stitch together with Mia. If he was going to fight for who he wanted to be, he would have to confront the empire behind his name. Determined, he gripped the phone tighter, ready to step into the storm, not just for himself, but for love. The call loomed in the air, heavy with unspoken expectations. Ethan steadied himself, recognizing the distinct tone from his father, a sound he had grown accustomed to yet always dreaded. He inhaled, forced the oxygen into his lungs as if it were armor, and pressed the speaker to his ear. "Father," he managed, his voice slightly steadier than he felt. "What's this about?" "Hardly a greeting, Ethan. We need to discuss your future," Daniel replied, his voice a calculated mixture of authority and impatience. "Can we not do this now?" "I was busy," he countered, a flash of defiance leveraging itself against the customary reverence he felt for his father's demands. It was a mere spark, but it ignited something deep within him. "Busy with what?" Daniel's tone sharpened, cutting through the air between them. "This isn't a game, son. You're at a crucial point in your life, and I expect you to take it seriously." The implicit judgment stung, igniting old ghosts of self-doubt. For years, Ethan had tiptoed through a minefield of his father's aspirations, perpetually aware that any deviation could lead to disapproval. Yet today, in the wake of his connection with Mia, he found something missing from his usual acquiescence. Fear. "Actually, I've been thinking about that," he said, surprising himself with the calmness in his voice. "I need to define my own path. I'm not just your son or a piece in your board game anymore." There was a silence, a fleeting moment of shock, and then a low chuckle as though Daniel found amusement in his son's rebellion. "You think you can just decide to change everything? You're not built for this, Ethan. This is a world you can't just step into without preparation. His chest tightened. The familiar frustration bubbled to the surface and he challenged himself to let it flow. Maybe you're right that I haven't lived up to your expectations, but I'm starting to understand what I want. I'm more than a shadow to your name. I refuse to live my life like that anymore. That's naive, his father snapped back, voice sharp against the backdrop of his intricately built empire. You need to help manage the family business. You're wasting time chasing ideas that will lead you nowhere. Just remember this. No one will care how you feel when it comes to success. His words echoed in Ethan's mind. The image of Mia's laughter collided with his father's icy pragmatism. There it was. A vision of life infused with choice versus a life dictated by duty. The stakes had never felt higher, yet amidst the chaos, clarity broke through. I need to find my own meaning to struggle for what matters to me, Ethan replied, his voice steadier yet tinged with vulnerability. And that doesn't currently include business meetings or corporate strategies. Maybe I just want to explore who I am without your influence. You'll regret this, Daniel warned, his tone darkening. I will not allow you to waste this opportunity. No one's wasting anything but my potential, Ethan interjected firmly. You taught me the importance of standing my ground, an invaluable lesson that until now has felt like a prison. But this time, my words will carry weight. The response left a deathly stillness hanging in the air. Ethan deflated against the wall. Every muscle relaxed slightly, his heart pounding with the realization that he was finally facing the man who personified his highest fears. He had taken a significant step toward freedom, yet the specter of familial loyalty still loomed, heavy and unforgiving. Let's see what happens then, Daniel said, voice thick with disappointment. But remember, I always have a backup plan for you if necessary. As his father hung up, the silence that followed felt deafening yet liberating. The confrontation with Daniel wasn't just about detaching from his father's legacy. It was also about reclaiming authority over his existence. Now, with a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation, Ethan realized that while his father's calls had just interrupted one chapter, it was time to craft his own story. And perhaps to bring Mia into it. He couldn't ignore that pulling instinct, an urge to reach out and share the changes within him. Perhaps this newfound courage wasn't just a rebellion, but a necessary step towards new beginnings. The phone buzzed in his hand, an incoming message from Mia. This could either fortify him further or unravel his resolve. With trembling fingers he opened it, breath hitching at the possibility. What awaited him on the other side? Ethan stared at the message, heart racing as his thoughts danced between excitement and trepidation. There it was on the screen, her name illuminating a new path, a small window into the possibility of something real amidst the chaos of his familial obligations. Hey, are we still on for coffee tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it. A simple inquiry, yet it sent ripples through his steady facade. How had he come to this? A date. A conversation away from the suffocating expectations of family business, and a world dictated by spreadsheets and corporate jargon. Glancing back at his reflection in the glass, he hardly recognized the man staring back, no longer a mere extension of his father's ambitions but a hopeful spirit, ready to carve out his own identity. The tapping of his fingers hesitated as thoughts clouded his mind. Could he truly forge a connection with Mia? Could he be honest about his struggles, the pressures lurking beneath his carefully curated exterior? He decided swiftly. He would embrace this opportunity. Replying with a smiley face and assurance that he was eager made him feel lighter. His thumbs flew across the screen with a new clarity. Yet, an anxious thread tugged at him as he pondered the secret, lingering doubts about his worthiness. Was he equipped to share his journey, stripped of privilege, burdened by the legacy of a powerful father? The morning sun broke through his apartment window, casting a warm glow that felt like a gentle nudge toward courage. With every sip of coffee, Ethan felt the weight of his father's call move slightly to the background. A reminder, yet not the force it had been. Instead, a new presence loomed, Mia and the uncharted territories to explore with her. He realized how vital it was to shift focus from what was expected to what could be. Throughout the day, he oscillated between fervent excitement and gravity. The image of Mia's smile, her laugh, held promise. And then guilt returned, creeping in, darkening his thoughts. How could he put their budding relationship against the backdrop of dictated success, against family expectations? Such choices, though not easy, seemed paramount to his evolution. His afternoon was filled with a restless energy. He doodled plans for a different future, sketches of ideas outside the confines of what his family envisioned. A cafe, a creative hub, art installations, anything that broke the mold of financial discussions and operational ledgers. When he finally arrived at the cafe, the charming atmosphere buzzed with lively chatter. Ethan scanned the room, and then he saw her, Mia, with her unmistakable glow and genuine smile that sparked something profound within him. "Hey, you made it," she grinned, and not even a trace of nervousness spoiled the moment. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied, locking eyes with her momentarily. The connection felt electric. At that moment he realized it wasn't just coffee they were sharing. They were partaking in a delicate dance of possibility. As they engaged in conversation, exchanging laughter and thoughts that flowed freely, he found himself revealing bits of vulnerability, speaking about the pressure without the fear of judgment. Each word shared drew them closer, each laugh a reinforcement of a fragile yet burgeoning bond. Ethan's internal struggle flickered with vulnerability, yet with every shared story, he also felt the stirrings of newfound strength. The willingness to unpack his burdens, to let someone into his world, felt like a rebellion against the past. Moments turned into hours, and finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a thought surfaced. For the first time, he pondered what it might be like to fully embrace his own identity, independent from the tannic stain of his father's legacy. "Now that we're here, what do you think about taking a day trip this weekend? Just to find something new together?" Mia asked, her voice layered with curiosity. Ethan's pulse quickened, uncertainty colliding with the thrill of opportunity. Did he have the courage to seize those moments, fully unencumbered by the ghost of his father's expectations? The internal debate flared, the answer poised at the tip of his tongue. Could this be the turning point? The invitation to truly embrace his path? "Absolutely," he finally replied, feeling the shroud of his past begin to lift, if only just a little. But just as relief washed over him, the nagging doubts crept back in. Would he be able to maintain both this new adventure and the looming shadows of his obligations? As they exchanged contact information with excited anticipation, a flicker of worry flashed through him. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his father would seek to pull him back into the fold. Tomorrow would reveal more about his connection with Mia, more about his struggle for independence. The moment was ripe for exploration, yet his heart fluttered in the presence of uncertainty. Would he possess the resolve to pursue it? This time, he didn't turn back as they both stepped into a future yet unwritten, but the echoes of his father's warning loomed larger than before. Ethan awoke the next morning, the sunlight streaming through his window illuminating fragments of his thoughts. He slid out of bed, still buoyed by the excitement from the previous evening spent with Mia. A thrill coursed through him, punctuated by the nagging reminders of his father's looming expectations. His father's voice echoed in his mind, powerful and imposing, the voice that ruled his choices like a fortress. As he dressed, folding each shirt with precision, he wondered if he'd ever be free from those chains. Yet Mia was the spark he needed, a catalyst for deeper change. He cracked a smile at the thought of her laugh and how effortlessly they connected. In the flurry of breakfast preparations, Ethan found himself sculpting plans for the day ahead. Should he dive into his work tasked by his father, or take a risk and plan a day out with Mia? He opted for the latter, needing the courage to step outside the confines of his ancestral expectations. Holding on to that choice brought a burst of confidence. Grabbing his backpack, he clasped it tightly as if it held his resolve. With each step toward the cafe, he felt a newfound lightness mingling with trepidation. What if he stumbled over his words? What if he revealed too much? Doubt edged in, but he swiftly shook it off. Today was about discovery, both of the city and of himself, he hoped. Mia arrived moments later, a vibrant presence in a sundress that danced with every step. "Hey there, ready for an adventure?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Always, Ethan replied, an unexpected conviction bubbling up within him. Her energy was infectious, dismantling fragile barriers he had spent years reinforcing. They hit the road, driving into the heart of the city, its skyline framed against a clear blue sky. As they ambled through streets alive with culture, art, and culinary delights, Ethan felt elements of his identity unfurl. Questions about his career, his father's business, the relentless quest for success transformed into musings about passion and creativity. The charming vibrancy of their surroundings mirrored the unfolding connection between them. At a bustling market, Mia guided him toward stalls lined with artists displaying their work. Paintings, crafts, and music infiltrated the air, each piece a story waiting to be unraveled. Ethan's eyes sparkled as he immersed himself in a world far from those boardrooms. He asked questions, he explored, all while sharing insights of his own buried dreams that ventured beyond the rigid paths imposed on him. "What do you see?" she asked, gesturing toward a canvas of swirling colors reflecting a chaotic yet harmonious scene. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his past hover like a specter, but he chose to voice his thoughts. "I see connections," he started slowly. "Different aspects of life intermingling. It reminds me that there can be more than one path, more than one vision." Mia nodded intently, her attention unwavering. "You're right, Ethan. Everything doesn't need to align perfectly. Life is messy and beautiful all at once." Her words ignited a sense of longing within him, not just for the courage to break free, but for the vulnerability to dream on his own terms. As they continued exploring, sharing stories and aspirations, he began to peel back layers of his carefully constructed facade. He talked about art, about how he could visualize a future crafting spaces for creativity and inspiration, his unspoken passion unveiling itself, much like paint spilling across a canvas. By the end of the day, the weight of his family's expectations still clung to him, but now it was accompanied by the burgeoning vision of his own desires. His heart thumped continuously in his chest, not just with excitement, but with validation he had seldom given himself. Mia turned to him as daylight faded into evening, her eyes illuminating the darkness. "I'm really glad we spent the day together. It felt different, in a good way." In that moment, something pivotal clicked within him. He realized this connection was not just about Mia, but about the version of himself he was beginning to develop. As they strolled back to the car, the night air vibrated with potential. Yet a shadow loomed over him. His father's voice. The reminders of expectations beginning to revive. The unease threatened to overshadow the day's discoveries. "Ethan." Mia's gentle call snapped him from his thoughts, concern flickering across her face. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, attempting to mask the turmoil. "You okay?" The question hung in the air, weighted by truth. Did he dare unveil his vulnerabilities to her, or risk losing the fragile connection they'd built? He faced her, grappling with a decision that could alter the course of everything. The moment was ripe for revelation, the choice looming, a confrontation with the expectations he had yet to fully embrace the challenge of dismantling. "Actually, there's something I need to share." Ethan's heart raced, caught between the urge to confide in Mia and the suffocating weight of family expectations. The cool night air wrapped around them, amplifying the tension hanging in the silence. He could feel the latent challenge emerging, demanding him to confront not just his feelings, but the reality of who he was versus who he was expected to be. He began, his voice cracking slightly, but he quickly recalibrated. "I've struggled a lot with what my family expects from me. It's like I'm playing a part in a script I didn't write." Mia's gaze remained steady, inviting him to continue. The empathy in her expression was grounding. "What do you mean?" she prompted softly, as if shredding the limits of his guardedness one layer at a time. "I grew up with this idea that I was supposed to become a corporate executive, to follow my father's path. But I discovered I've buried parts of myself just to please others," he admitted. The realization rolled off his tongue, raw and unfamiliar. "I've always felt like I was more attached to what I should do rather than what I want to do." Her silence pressed down on him, but it was a pressure that urged him on. "I don't want to do just numbers or manage companies," he explained, some exhilaration flaring inside as he spoke. "Deep down, I love design and creativity. I want to create spaces that inspire others, not just profit margins." Mia's eyes lit up with a glimmer of understanding, and that flicker curdled his anxiety. "Why haven't you pursued that? What's stopping you?" It was an essential question, one that made Ethan's fingers twitch with uncertainty. The habit of deflecting serious conversation nagged at him. "Fear, I guess, of disappointing my dad or being seen as a failure. Failure is part of growth." Her voice was steady, a balm against the storm brewing inside him. "What you're afraid of is a potential that doesn't align with who you truly are. It isn't weakness. It's brave to explore the possibilities." Ethan swallowed hard, her words reverberating deeply. Mia's presence radiated courage, but what she was offering was more profound, a challenge not just to his fears, but to take action, to dream audaciously. He posed the question in his mind. Were his father's dreams written in stone, or could they be rewritten? Ethan reflected on their conversation as they drove back. The city sparkled like scattered jewels in the night, untouched by his family's legacy. Each flicker of light outside his window whispered the words he had yet to voice fully. He had let years of expectations cloud his view of self-discovery. "I think I'm ready to make some changes," he said slowly, the words forming into a tentative, yet resolute commitment. Mia smiled warmly, yet he sensed she expected more, not just passive acceptance. "What does that look like for you?" He mulled over her question, contemplating the pathway that lay ahead. The design career that felt distant began to take form in his mind, shadowed by a weighty sense of possibility. "Maybe I can take a class or even volunteer at a local nonprofit that focuses on urban design," he mused aloud, excitement mingling with apprehension. "I don't know, but it feels like a first step." "That's a great idea," she chimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "It's facing those expectations and defining yourself that will lead to your authentic path." Ethan smiled, feeling the groundwork of change solidify beneath his feet. Yet still, questions loomed, filling the air with uncertainty. Was he truly ready to rock the foundations of his family's legacy? Mia's phone buzzed, her expression changing as she glanced at the screen. The light on her face dimmed briefly, and Ethan caught glimpses of another reality vying for her attention. "I should get going," she said reluctantly, glancing back at him. "But I really believe you can do this. I want to be on this journey with you." Ethan nodded, yet underneath the surface a new type of pressure arose, not from outside forces but from within, demanding consistency in his intentions and aspirations. Could he truly maintain this momentum, or would the haunting specter of his father's approval draw him back into complacency? "Let's meet again soon," he suggested, the plea hanging delicately on the air. She grinned, ecstatic. "Absolutely. Let's keep this going, Ethan." As they parted ways, uncertainty loomed, intermingled with a sense of burgeoning courage. The echoes of the night instilled clarity, but the true test awaited on the horizon. Ethan looked back at Mia, watching her disappear into the darkness, yet her presence lingered, a thread of strength woven into his evolving narrative. But as he stepped inside his house, the echoes of his father's legacy roared back to life, more demanding than ever. The question remained, as he stood at the crossroads of expectation and self-discovery, which path would he follow? This time, with a newfound voice, he intended to make it his own. Yet the moment hung heavy with the possibilities of resistance or rebellion. The moment had arrived. It was time to confront the person who had molded so much of his life yet understood so little of who he truly was. Ethan stood alone in the dimly lit hallway, the weight of his father's expectations pressing against his chest like a physical force. Each step towards his room felt like dragging a heavy anchor. The quietness of the house seemed to amplify his swirling thoughts, the echoes of his father's authoritative voice blending with Mia's encouraging tone. Transformation, he realized, was neither simple nor straightforward. As he sank onto his bed, his mind raced with the possibilities and fears tethered to a life not yet lived. What if he took that design class? What if he volunteered? Each scenario flickered in and out of focus, riddled with doubts about his abilities and fear of confronting his father. His gaze landed on a stack of papers cluttering his bedside table, reports from a recent corporate project. In that moment, they felt suffocating, as if they were physical embodiments of the life he was expected to lead. The thought of allocating more time to corporate swathes made his stomach churn. Instead, he closed his eyes, pulling from memory the sketches he had hidden away, aspirations that wished to breathe but remained trapped under the confines of duty. Reality pressed back. His father's voice reverberated in his mind, questioning his commitment, chastising him for wandering away from the company's vision. Ethan groaned quietly, grappling with the duality that defined his existence. Who would he be if he defied that voice? With determination simmering against the tide of doubt, he flipped open a laptop that hummed quietly on his desk. The screen illuminated, and a blank document awaited him, a space devoid of expectation. Could he begin to write his story? He pondered this as he typed the words, "Pursue Design," each letter morphing into a tangible dream, no longer mere abstraction. He paused, recognizing the unease that came with crafting a new narrative. Anxiety coiled in his chest like a serpent, and he felt its familiar embrace. The old fears rushed in. Would others respect this decision? Would his father view it as a betrayal? Yet that very skepticism highlighted the urgency to reclaim ownership of his choices. Inhaling deeply, he crafted a bold outline of what his initial step would entail. Enroll in an online design course, attend local art exhibits, network, volunteer. Each item sounded more promising than the last, igniting a flicker of excitement deep within. He envisioned himself surrounded by vibrant art, collaborative spaces, the scent of fresh paint, and endless possibilities. Perhaps, just perhaps, this new step would ultimately bridge the gap between him and the person he aspired to be. Days passed and small changes intertwined seamlessly with his routine. Ethan registered for a design class with trembling hands but soaring hope. The night before his first session, he felt restless, anticipation buzzing beneath his skin. When he arrived, his heart raced at the sight of fellow students buzzing with enthusiasm and creativity. Ethan's self-doubt flickered in and out as the teacher encouraged them to introduce themselves. The nervous energy gave way to a wave of relief as they shared their passions. He realized he was surrounded by other souls in pursuit of their dreams, people who understood what it felt like to be trapped between expectation and ambition. The camaraderie felt electric, but his father's voice still lingered, echoing doubts mingling with a newfound sense of belonging. That night, as he sank back into his bed, Ethan felt transformed. He could distinguish the beat of his own heart, stronger, vibrant, steady. This metamorphosis was just the beginning, but challenges loomed like dark clouds on the horizon. The next day, he braced himself for dinner at home. His father awaited, the familiar tension wrapping around him like a tight coil. The time had come to reveal his newfound journey and face the tirade he feared. As they sat across from each other, the polite banter began to settle into a familiar rhythm. The momentary calm before the storm set the stage for a confrontation he wasn't sure he was prepared for. Ethan's resolve flickered. It was now or never. Breathe, he told himself. As the discussion danced casually, he toyed with words, contemplating how to introduce his discovery. The perfect moment teased him from the shadows. Yet just as he opened his mouth, a notification buzzed on his phone, illuminating a message from Mia. "Let's talk about our next steps. It's time to dive deeper into what's waiting for you." As he read her words, Ethan's heart surged. The sudden urgency boosted his courage and he locked eyes with his father, clenching his fists beneath the table. It was time to confront the past. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you." The storm of expectation loomed, crackling around them, and Ethan prepared to step into the tempest, ownership of his path unraveling before him. What would his father's reaction be? Would the confrontation herald liberation or calamity? He braced himself, ready to venture into the uncharted waters of honesty. Ethan's voice trembled as he spoke, the words pushing through the barrier of his fears. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you." He felt every eye in the room shift toward him, drawn by the weight of his declaration. His father met his gaze, a mixture of curiosity and warning flickering across his expression. The silence became suffocating, each passing second amplifying Ethan's anxiety. In that moment, he questioned whether he could bridge the chasm between duty and desire. "I've started a design class." The confession escaped in a rush, honesty blending with the anxiety that had taken residence in his chest. "I want to pursue a career in design." Just saying it felt monumental, as if he had shed the skin of the boy who had hid in his father's shadow. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's heart drummed a chaotic rhythm, each beat a reminder of the storm brewing beneath the surface of his father's composed facade. "What do you mean, a design class?" His father's tone was measured, but the tightness around his eyes revealed the inner conflict wrestling for control. "This is a distraction. You have responsibilities." Ethan clenched his fists, feeling the sting of his father's disapproval, but he pressed on. "I know what I'm supposed to do, but I can't ignore what I love anymore." His father shifted, a crack forming in the steely exterior he had always presented. "You think drawing pictures will amount to anything? You're destined for more." Resentment flashed through Ethan, and he instinctively knew this conversation was pivotal. The echoes of his father's expectations weighed heavily against the voice within him that craved authenticity. "I don't want to just take over the company. I want to create. I want to build something that represents who I am, not just who you want me to be." Ethan expected anger, but what he found instead was a subtle shift in his father's posture. It was as if the walls were beginning to crack, just enough to let a faint light through. Seconds stretched into an eternity, the weight of their shared history hanging palpably between them. "Do you honestly think you can make a living being an artist?" his father asked, the challenge evident. "What will people say? What about your future?" "I have to try." The conviction in Ethan's voice surprised even him. This was not merely a battle against his father's expectations. It was a fight for his future. A future filled with color, creativity, and most importantly, his own narrative. His father shifted again, gaze narrowing contemplatively. "You think I don't know what it takes to succeed? I built this from the ground up. You are throwing all that away." Ethan's heart sank, a waft of defeat clawing at his resolve, but he dared to hope. What if it's not throwing it away? What if I could merge both? What if I succeed in a way that's true to me? The tension in the room felt electric. For a fleeting moment, Ethan envisioned a life where he could create without shackles, where art was not synonymous with failure, but rather with fulfillment. "I just want to have the chance to discover who I really am," Ethan said softly, his vulnerability cutting through the anger. "Who you really are," his father echoed, voice lowering, a hint of contemplation lacing the words. "I can't carry the weight of what you want for me if it's not what I want for myself," Ethan finished, heart pounding as he awaited his father's response. In that fragile silence they began to redefine their relationship, delicately peeling back layers of expectation and fear. Ethan sensed the shift. The air crackled with uncertainty and possibility. But before either could speak, Ethan's phone buzzed again, a different message illuminating the screen. "Let's showcase our projects at the next gallery. You in?" Ethan's heart raced, not just from the invitation but from the way it cleared a path forward even amidst his father's discontent. The invitation felt like a lifebuoy amidst his swirling doubts, a sign that the journey was not just his own, but shared with others who understood. "Dad, if this doesn't work out, I'll go back to corporate," he assured. But even he doubted the promise. Something in him stirred, a possibility for a future unshackled from fear. But now, the question remained. Would he have the courage to embrace rejection, push through doubt, and transform his vision into reality? And what would he find when he dared to pursue it? Ethan's resolve tightened as he braced for the response. Would his father's acceptance lead to a new understanding, Or would it push Ethan further into the unknown? The answer hung suspended in the air, anticipation sparking around them, and a resolution awaited just out of reach. Ethan's phone buzzed once more, the screen illuminating his face with a fresh wave of reality. He took a deep breath, allowing the moment to sink in. The decision lay before him like an open road, its direction uncertain but full of potential. With the gallery showcase looming, he felt an urgency swell within him, an exhilaration tinged with dread. "I need to respond," he thought, the words echoing in his mind. His father's gaze remained fixed upon him, a mixture of disappointment and contemplation swirling in the silence. The weight of expectation was palpable, yet Ethan could feel the slightest shift in the atmosphere, a crack forming in the rigid structure his father had built around him. "What are you thinking?" his father finally asked, voice lower now, tinged with an unfamiliar softness. "I'm thinking about how this is my chance to show you what I can do," Ethan replied, his resolve hardening. "I've spent so long suffocating under the fear of disappointing you and everyone else. This is my chance to express who I truly am." His father raised an eyebrow, weighing Ethan's words against the often-held belief that success was synonymous with financial stability. "And what if it doesn't work out? What if everyone laughs at you?" The thought pierced through Ethan, momentarily stealing his breath. No one wanted to be ridiculed. But that fear slowly transformed into a fire igniting his determination. "What if they don't?" he countered, a cautious optimism threading through his voice. "This is what I want. And if I fail, it's still mine. You've always taught me that failure is a part of success. I want to own this journey, however it goes." His father leaned back, fingers steepled, expression inscrutable. The confrontation was both exhilarating and terrifying, as the gap between them appeared precariously bridged. Ethan felt the ground beneath him shift. Was it possible his father might understand? "I respect your desire for independence, Ethan," his father eventually said. "But there's a world out there that doesn't care about passion. It cares about results." Ethan felt a pang in his chest. "And how do I measure results? By the metrics of corporate success or by what brings me joy? I need to know if I can create something meaningful. If I don't pursue this now, I might regret it. Can you accept that?" They lingered in the silence, each moment heavy with the implications of their conversation. This was more than a discussion about career paths. It was a negotiation of self-worth, a struggle to redefine their relationship. Ethan looked at his father, noticing the lines of weariness etched into his forehead. He remembered the sacrifices his father had made to build a legacy. It dawned on him that this wasn't merely about Ethan following his dreams, but also about empowering his father to accept that there were often multiple paths to fulfillment. "I want you to be proud of me, Dad," Ethan said quietly, pasting every ounce of sincerity into the words. "But I can't accept your definition of pride. I need to forge my own." His father's expression shifted again. Conflicting emotions played across his features, a flicker of uncertainty intertwined with concern. Though Ethan sensed a measure of change, it was impossible to predict how far their conversation would truly lead. "I won't be easy on you," his father finally said, a note of firmness creeping back into his voice. "If you're going to take this leap, you better be ready to fight for it." "I will," Ethan replied, heart racing. "This is the fight I've been waiting for." As he glanced at his phone, the invitation seemed to underscore his point, a beacon of hope. But amid the thrill of the moment, another question slithered into his mind. What if he was ill-prepared for the reality of the showcase? What if this wasn't just about his art, but about revealing who he was to the world? Turning back to his father one last time, Ethan felt the urgency rise within him again. This path could lead to acceptance or rejection. The stakes felt uniquely high. Facing that uncertainty was an inherent part of his growth, and yet the fear lingered, daunting yet tantalizing. The conversation was unfinished, the implications palpable. And as Ethan reached for his phone to accept the invitation, he realized there was no turning back. This was his journey, and only he could carve the way. But just as he raised his hand to type, a new message appeared, shaking the foundation of his resolve. I have something important to share with you, something I never told anyone before. It's about your mother. The room stilled around him, the air thick with anticipation. What more could he possibly discover when he was already on the brink of a personal revolution? Would this change everything he thought he knew? Ethan's heart raced, the sudden turn in the conversation shaking the very foundation of his resolve. The message about his mother hung in the air like a fog, shrouding his ambitions in uncertainty. What could it possibly mean? He had spent years untangling his relationship with his father, trying to establish his own identity underneath the weight of legacy. Now, that effort felt precarious at best. Dad, what do you know about her? He shot back, his voice steadier than he felt. The memory of his mother, her absence, combined with the tension of the moment, propelled him forward. He needed answers. He had always felt the void she left, and now it threatened to turn his fledgling confidence into confusion. Daniel's eyes hardened, but there was a flicker of something. Remorse? Regret? It's not the time, Ethan, he warned, firm but weary, like a parent trying to shield a child from a storm. Actually, I think it is, Ethan insisted. The moment felt monumental, charged with potential that was both exhilarating and terrifying. He didn't care how it tied in with his father's expectations or his father's journey. He cared about his journey, and perhaps the answer to who he was lay hidden in the depths of their shared past. We both know she wasn't just an afterthought, Dad. Ethan pressed, unyielding. I think it's time I learned more about her. I've been crafting my path, stepping away from conformity. If there are remnants of her in that journey, I have to know. Silence stretched between them, heavy and palpable. Daniel shifted in his seat, the vivid memories flickering behind his insistent exterior. The vulnerability Ethan had cultivated in his pursuit of design and connection with Mia had prepared him for this moment. He would no longer remain a passive player in his father's narrative. After what felt like an eternity, Daniel sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. Your mother was complicated. She had dreams, Ethan. Dreams that challenged more than just our family. Ethan's pulse quickened. What kind of dreams? She wanted to break into the art world. She was incredibly talented, but her ambitions never aligned with my plans. She chose to prioritize our family over her passions, Daniel finally confessed. The steeliness in his voice replaced by a softness that revealed years of burden. In doing so, she lost herself. I never wanted that for you. But perhaps I've made you carry a different kind of weight because of that. A rush of emotions crashed over Ethan. His mother's aspirations combined with the reality of her sacrifice transformed his vision of what success and identity truly meant. His path was rooted in authenticity, not just familial loyalty. This revelation felt like a release, allowing him to step further away from the expectations tying him down. I want to learn from that, Ethan said firmly, pushing the fear of disappointment aside. I want to find my own way, just like Mom should have. Daniel's gaze fell, a flicker of something akin to regret crossing his features. I didn't realize I was perpetuating those same fears in you. All I've ever wanted was to secure a future for you. By locking me into the identity you crafted, Ethan interrupted, a clarity imbued with striking conviction. But now I see that by doing so, you risked losing what made this family great. Your inability to let go of your visions pushed me into a life I never wanted. In that moment, Daniel seemed to age under the weight of Ethan's words, and the tension faded slightly, replaced by something more fragile. Understanding, perhaps. He wasn't just facing his father. He was acknowledging his mother's influence by reclaiming the narrative of his life. Each word he spoke rang true with the bell of personal growth, heralding the power of stepping into one's light, however dim that light had been until now. I will be pursuing my dreams, Dad, not just to embrace my identity but in honor of Mom's story, Ethan affirmed, feeling more empowered than ever. I cannot pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm an element of both you and her. I need to pursue what is authentically me. And I don't want you to lose that part of yourself. Daniel admitted, a shadow of reluctance flash in his father's eyes. A silence settled, a tenuous space where old conflicts thinned like mist under the morning sun. The moment was ripe for healing, and Ethan seized it. There will be bumps along the way, but I need to own my journey. I refuse to live in the shadows of expectations any longer. Daniel met his gaze, a shift of recognition palpable in the air. I can respect that, he said slowly. And if this is what you truly want, I will support you. I won't pretend to understand it completely, but I want you to discover your own path. A wave of relief washed over Ethan. Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know. And if I fail or struggle, I'll figure it out. I promise to turn to you, and perhaps we can redefine our relationship as I pursue this. Daniel nodded, an understanding flickering in his eyes. In the aftermath of that confrontation, Ethan felt elevated, not just free from the grasp of his father's expectations, but ready to embrace the legacy of both parents without the confines of a preordained destiny. As they concluded their conversation, Ethan stepped back into his own life with a renewed sense of purpose, confidence surging through him. With Mia, he could intertwine their stories and hold on to shared dreams of creating spaces that celebrated both their identities. His voice merged with a stronger echo of authenticity. Within those moments of vulnerability, Ethan realized that love, be it familial or romantic, could create the pathways to healing. He would honor his mother's spirit while forging ahead with conviction. With newfound resolution and inspired by the support that emerged from the storm, Ethan accepted the invite for the gallery showcase, understanding it was a step toward embracing his art, his journey, and a future that truly belonged to him. He was no longer just Daniel's son. He was Ethan, and everything lay open before him. A world of infinite possibilities awaited. The present was right there, urging him to act, to transform aspirations into reality. With Mia by his side, he could explore the uncharted territory where vulnerability danced with opportunity. And so, the story was reborn, not through mirroring a legacy, but carving a vibrant tapestry of experiences uniquely his own. Now, more than ever, this was the moment to seize his identity. This is your chance to become a part of the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is vital. Comment your reactions and theories about this resolution. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.